This is a production of Cornell University.
Dave mentioned that I've been doing a lot of traveling. My primary responsibility for this year and probably for the next 2 years is to be training our conservation planners within the Natural Resources Conservation Service. They all have to be certified for conservation planning. And one of the courses that are required is the economics of conservation planning. So we've been teaching, I've got 8 weeks this summer, I've been teaching it, and we've got other counterparts that are teaching as well. But we have to do within 5 years, 3,000 employees. So what I've done though, for this particular talk is taken some of the principles that we teach our planners and applied it to the soil health concept for you guys. And then I'm going to winnow it down and actually talk about soil health in New York and some case studies that have been done here in New York that I helped. There was a retired economist, Flo Schwartz, who has worked with them. And one of the case studies actually is Dave Magus' farm. And so I'll hand those out at the end so that it doesn't kind of take you away from my talk. Down arrow, you said? Okay. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about the different soil health management practices that NRCS will provide technical and financial assistance for. There are more practices, soil health related, but these are kind of the core practices that are used within NRCS. And those are the conservation tillage, crop rotation, cover cropping, field borders, riparian buffers, nutrient management, and integrated pest management. So how do economists compare these different practices and help to provide information to producers so that they can make an informed decision? What would work for them in their particular operation? So what we do is we divide things, of course, into benefits and costs. And in the benefits, NRCS looks at things according to what we call SWAPA, which is soil, water, air, plants, animals, and then they added energy, and then also human considerations. So those are the type of benefit categories that we look at when we're comparing things. And we do this not only for on-farm, but we do this when we're looking at policy analysis as well. It's consistent. And the costs, of course, are the typical economic costs of land, labor, capital, management, and risk. And in this case, the off-farm and on-farm benefits will differ. It just depends on the viewpoint. If you're looking from a policy viewpoint, you're looking at the off-farm benefits. And to be talking to a producer about implementing practices, of course, we're looking at what is the impact to them. So these are some templates that we have developed. I believe, Paul, maybe you can help me, or maybe some of the district conservationists here, there's around 130 practices or so that we have standards and specifications for. So a counterpart of mine took those 130 practices and developed these templates. And they basically take the categories that I showed you before and talked about for each of these practices, what could the potential positive effects and negative effects be for a producer if they were to implement that practice. And it's helpful because when a conservation planner goes on a farm and they want to talk to it, they kind of have a laundry list to start with. And there might be some additional things that are particularly on that farm that are not there, but it's a really good laundry list that you can go through and say, okay, this doesn't apply here, but something else does. And it helps them categorize the benefits and the costs. So I gave an example here of cover cropping. We call those T-charts, by the way. Okay, so when you're looking at economics, and what we teach our conservation planners is we're really looking at the change from before to after. We don't have to look at everything. We don't have to look at enterprise budgets and all that unless we're really winnowing down to something. When we're talking to our producers, we're just looking at the positive effects and the negative effects of the change before and after. So, of course, the positive effects from a partial budget could be increased revenues or reduced costs, and the negative effects could be increased costs or decreased revenue. I'm going to try to help make up time. So what we do is we take those concepts and then we go through our T-charts, which come up with the different categories we should be looking at. And this we call level 1, which is just descriptive. So in this case, we're looking at the positive effects, might be treatment here. What they've done is they've combined different practices into what we call a system. And the system is looking at the whole system on a field or on a farm or whatever. It could be just one practice, or it could be a combination of practices. So a combination of practices is a system. So in this case, we have a conservation treatment. They have crop rotation, residue management, pest management, and nutrient management. And then we go through that and we talk about the positive effects and the negative effects of that. And so in the descriptive, we're just talking about yield increasing. If they're getting a financial assistance payment, that would be an increased revenue on down. And then the negative effects could be you have to buy no-till drill, or increased pest management, those type of things. Or in a short time period, you may actually lose production. So we outline all of that for a producer, or try to. Okay, I jumped to a level 3. A level 2, just real briefly, is you start putting numbers to them. They don't have to be consistent. It might be like saving tons of soil per acre, or buying a no-till drill at $20,000 or something like that. And then what the third example does is it puts it in like terms. So in this case, you've got crop rotation, and there's a formula that you can come up with to determine what the average cost per acre per year is for that. I won't go into detail, but it can be done. You can reduce the cost by decreasing fertilizer, reducing tillage passes, reducing fuel and labor. There's other positive effects, improve soil and water quality, and you may have some sort of habitat improvement for wildlife. And then the negative effects, what they do is they take something like a purchase no-till drill and we amortize it over a time period. And that when you do all that, then you can come up with $1 per acre per year positive impacts and negative impacts. So if you look, let me see here. Oh, did the wrong button, didn't I? Okay, there you go. Down here, that's the sum of all the benefits. So it's $60 per acre per year in this example. And then the negative effects, the total is $22 per acre per year. And so the net benefits would be $38 per acre per year. So another thing that we do is we take all this information, and a lot of producers might say, well, this all sounds well and good, but how does this really work? I'd like to talk to people, or I'd like to see some examples of real life experiences. So that's where we're doing the case studies. And the benefit is that usually we use the partial budget technique. It does give real world examples. We work with the producers to develop them. A good case study is not just a shining example. It also shows the hardships that they've gone through to get to where they are. And that's really important, because we don't want to paint a rosy picture all the time. They're going to have trials and tribs when they change what they're doing. You want to make sure that it's relatable to whoever your audience is. So you pick a producer that either is respected or it relates. They've got very similar circumstances to the audience that you're trying to provide this case study for. And the one thing I want to say is when you look at these case studies, and there's a lot of them out there, you want to read it with a critical eye, because different people have different agendas. And there's sometimes when they say, oh, this looks really, really good, you've really got to get into the numbers to see if they're accurate or not. Sometimes they inflate benefits, or they decrease costs, or things like that. So make sure that when you're looking at things, that you're really reading it with a critical eye and asking questions. Okay, so the two examples that I'm going to hand out to people, if you're interested, are Angel Rose Dairy. And in this case, they did, both of these are in central New York, around the Ontario, northern Watertown area, I believe. One is in central New York somewhere, right? Yeah. Yeah, okay, yep. And that's the Angel Rose Dairy, where they have been doing no-till and cover cropping on 350 acres. And the total net benefits, it's over $8,000 or $24 per acre per year. And you can read more details about this. I'll hand it out in these case studies, the printouts. The other thing I want to say about the case studies is we try to make them 2 pages to hand out. They're meant to go to field days and things like that, so that people can very quickly look at it. And it's not a whole bunch of papers. They don't have to delve into a lot of research or whatever. They can cut to the chase right away. And then Dave Magnus's farm now, it was interesting that you're up to 800 cows now. I think ours was 670 or somewhere around there when we did the case study. So it's great that you're able to increase production on your farm. But anyway, there was 2,200 acres at that point, which was 2 years ago, I believe. And it had total net benefits of over $78,000 or $62 per acre per year. So some things to remember when you're doing partial budgeting or looking at case studies is that when you adopt a conservation system, you are looking at a long-term investment, especially with soil health. It's going to take time. It depends on how degraded your soil is. You're going to see, actually, I think they say that you'll see more benefits quicker when more degraded soil than very improved soil. There are agronomic benefits that also result in economic benefits. And an example is the reduced yield variability. So you're reducing risk. As soil health increases, you're not going to get as much of a wild swing in yields that you might have had before. And sometimes that's hard to quantify, but it's something to be discussed. And in order to realize the greatest benefits from a system, you have to figure out the system that works best on your operation, given your challenges and goals. And I think that's it.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.